Live stream. We're about
All
to
right.
live stream. It's thinking.
Somebody's got some background going.
It's setting it up. It's redirecting you to YouTube. Okay.
All right.
All right. We are live with Walter Bender, who's going to be doing a session on music blocks.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for taking some time out of your Sunday to join me. So I've really had a lot of fun with the Turtle Stitch group over the last few months, 3 months, and learned a lot about Snap as well, and just sort of a different way of looking at programming. I'd been working on something in parallel for quite a number of years now, actually, with my colleague Devin, who joined us today, which is similar in a lot of respects, but the domain is not embroidery. The domain in this case is music. And so it's another programming language. It's a programming language called Music Blocks. It's not based on Snap. It's based on a different, so I sort of call it a cousin of Snap, called Turtle Art, that Brian Silverman originally wrote. And Brian, some of you might know, Brian is the one who wrote, after Seymour and Cynthia and Wally invented Logo, there were lots of versions of Logo out there, and Brian probably wrote half of them. And Brian did this wonderful thing called Turtle Art, and I took it and ported it for One Laptop Per Child is one of the core activities for the kids in One Laptop Per Child. And then I started to extend it in different ways. And one of the extensions is what I'm going to be sharing with you today. It's called Music Blocks. Now, I did make a little web page that I forgot to share. I'll share it afterward, the link to it.
Okay.
And which is an explanation of how to think about music blocks if you're a Snap user. So if you're coming from the world of Snap, there are a few things that are going to be a little different in terms of just how you use the programming language. And so I put together a little memo on what some of those differences are, just to make it a little bit easier to make that transition. But I think after a while, you'll realize it's all, your body mechanics are going to be a little bit different, but the basic ideas are very, very similar. You have blocks that represent steps within a program, and you snap the blocks together and you run them. So with that, let me jump right into music blocks. I think we shared in the chat as well, there's a link to running the program itself. The program runs in a browser. I don't have a Mac, so I do most of my debugging in the world of Linux, and I use Chromium or Firefox, but it should work on a Mac in Safari as well, or on an iPad. But if you do run into problems, I'll try to keep some notes in terms of how to make things work a little bit better. But let me share my screen, and hopefully I'm going to share it properly so that we get audio. Share. And you should see my music blocks window now. And I'm going to just start with a new project just to
Would you make it bigger, the text?
yeah, I can make it bigger. Let me just do this first. So
Okay.
stupid Zoom stuff gets in the way
I
of
know. I'm glad you have difficulty too.
no, it's this stupid little, what is it doing? Don't do that. It's got me like in drawing mode or something instead of, how do I get out of drawing mode? I don't even know how I got in drawing mode. Here we go. I'm just gonna make a new screen. Maybe. It's not letting me do anything in my, oh, let's put more Zoom pop-ups on my screen. Okay, no. Hello, Zoom. We just tested this a minute ago and it worked.
We did. We tested it. I can,
Let me stop sharing and try again.
Yeah. Because it's sharing your whole screen instead of sharing the document.
Yeah, no, I wanted to share my whole screen,
Oh,
but I wanted to actually then be able to do stuff on my screen. All right, now it's working. So I just hit the new project button, and this is what you get by default when you start a Music Blocks project. And what it is it's a bunch of blocks, but the blocks connect a little differently. There's something called infix versus prefix, which has got to do with sort of the order of operations when you write an equation. And so this one, you put the operator and then you attach the arguments to the operator as opposed to putting the arguments around the operator. So
and you
you'll
make it
see.
a little larger, that's
Oh, I'm
all.
sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that. Here we
I
go.
see.
It's just a little
Ooh.
slow running Zoom.
Oh.
Here we go.
Yeah,
That-
that,
that-
for
that
me,
could be
that's
better.
better. But it's,
Leslie has a question,
Yeah,
Walter, which is,
sure.
does Music Blocks let you log in and get an account to save a program?
There is something called the Planet that lets you save programs, but we don't have accounts on Music Blocks because we didn't want to get into this whole thing of identity and all that. So it's all anonymous. Everything is anonymous in Music Blocks.
oh, well,
But there is this thing called the Planet, which
Oh.
is this button over here. And if you go there, you've got sort of your local planet, just your projects you've been working on. And then there's a global planet, which is everybody's projects. And you can search for things in the planet and open up other people's projects and do remixing and stuff like that. I'll get to that in a little bit.
It looks like you can download projects
Yeah,
too.
you can download projects as well, just locally to your computer. And then you can save projects in a lot of different formats. So I think by default, you guys should all be in beginner mode, and there's an advanced mode as well that's got lots of crazy ways of saving. So, for example, one of the things you can do with Music Blocks is save your project as sheet music. So you can, whatever you compose in Music Blocks, you can print it out as, as sheet music. And one of the ideas there is that we want to get the kids, interested in different representations of music, and different representations of the same idea. And some of those representations are the ones they invent. Some of them are traditional representations. We want them to be able to move back and forth between those worlds. So there are lots of different ways of doing that as well. And you can save the artwork you generate. You can save the music as a audio file. You can save your animations, things like that. But in any case, at the heart of Music Blocks is this thing called a note. And a note has a direct correlation to a note in music. It's got a duration. So this is a quarter note. And it's got a pitch. So this is going to, we by default, we use solfege. So this is a sol. So, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can also use letter names. You can use Indian music names. You can use lots of different representations of what a note is or what a pitch is. You can use hertz. But the basic idea is you've got a duration, so some amount of time, and you've got something that happens in that time period. And in this case, it's going to play a note. So a quarter note, half note. Let me play it by clicking on the start block. So did everybody hear that? Should have heard 3 notes play. 2 quarter notes, sol, mi, sol. So let me, and I can choose different instruments. So this was guitar, but I'm going to choose, so I'll go to the piano. And I can change that. Let's change the first note instead of being a quarter note. Let's change it to an 8th note. I use a lot of pie menus just because I happen to like them. So you'll see pie menus throughout, but now we'll go. So now the first note was half the length of the when it played before. And we can change which note we choose. So again, this is another pie menu. Let's start with do. And I can choose the octave. And then these are the the notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You can add accidentals, so sharps and flats. Um, so that's the basic idea, is that you just play notes. Notes take a certain amount of time to play, and you just string the notes together to make music. That's sort of at the heart of what goes on in music blocks. But then there are a bunch of other things you can start to play with that are, again, very similar, analogous to things you do in Snap. So one of the things you can do is there's something called actions, and actions are like commands. And I'm going to make an action. So I'm going to come over here and grab an action block off the palette. And I've got this thing called an action block, and I'm making a new command. So rather than making the new command in a separate little command generator window, it just makes the command right here on the screen. And as soon as I drag that action block off, it made the action block here over. So I'm going to grab one of those two. And I'm just going to take my little set of notes that I just made and stick them in the action. And then I'm going to take this action and put it here. And it's just going to play my action. I'll do it again. So I could do that, and maybe I want to do more than one action. So let's just do I'll play it twice now. And I can do things, there's repeat and the kinds of things you find on the, I forget what the name of that palette is. I call the flow palette, but the palette that has the repeats and the forevers and the, whatever that palette's called in,
Palette.
it's just called palette.
Yes.
I don't believe you. Anyway, so I can do a repeat. And then there's also some musical things that I can do along the way. So for example, I can do some things with let's see, how about I'll do a that will be a fun one. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sound, and I'm going to play it. The first time I'm just going to play it normally. And the second time I'm going to add an interval to the sound and see if you can hear the difference. So now what I'm doing is I'm using that bass note and I'm adding another note based on an interval on top of that note. So I get two notes inside of each note, or two pitches inside of each note. So I can manipulate the phrase that I've made here. This action represents a short piece of music, and I can start to manipulate that piece of music in different ways. With intervals, I can do different types of transformations. So I can I'm not used to working in, we can do like a crescendo, for example. So we can make the sound get louder as it plays. Let me do that. Let's make the crescendo 10. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this. Maybe make it be even more. And actually, if I start with a, let me set the volume more quiet to start. We're setting the volume of the piano. Where are you, piano? And we'll start with maybe something pretty quiet. And then we'll do our crescendo from something pretty quiet. Let's do, this time I think you should be able to hear the difference. You're getting louder. Bunch of blank stares, you can't hear it. All right, well, if you play with it yourself, Susan, you're on mute.
We can hear it.
Oh, you can hear it. Okay, all right. So anyway, so there are different ways of taking the basic sounds and manipulating them. And there's, if you go into advanced mode, there's lots and lots of manipulations. There's inverting, there's retrograde, there's all sorts of transformations you can do to the basic sound. So a lot of what you do with music blocks is you write phrases and then you combine the phrases in different ways to make different sounds, and then you do manipulations. So you might repeat a phrase a few times and then transform it and then bring it back. So a lot of musical composition is done that way, where you're working at this high level structure with these different pieces of sound. So I want to show you just a couple more things real quick, and then I want to jump into the actual lesson today.
I have a question. When
Sure.
I press, how do you get it to play?
Okay, so there are two different ways of getting it to play. One way is that you just click on the start block and it should play. And then the other way is you can hit the play button over here. When you hit the play button, all the blocks disappear. The play button way over on the right, upper right.
Oh, this one. Okay.
Okay, is everybody able to get it to play then? Cynthia, can you get it to play? Maybe we should take a quick play time and have everybody. Oh, all right. So the other thing is, yeah, over here on the palette, the rhythm palette's where you grab notes. And you can grab drums, you can grab notes, and then the pitch palette is some different ways of representing pitch. So if you want to make your notes with hertz instead of solfege, or and then there are different interval, tone, ornament, volume, or different ways of manipulating the sound. And then in the middle thing, here's actions and flows. I'm going to explain boxes a little bit later. Numbers are operators. And then there's some Boolean operators. And then there's a bunch of graphic stuff and other stuff like that that we'll get to in a few minutes too. So why doesn't everybody just try to string a few notes together in an action and see what happens, just to make sure everybody can do that much?
What's the difference between start and action?
Okay, action is like a command. Start, each start block gives you one of these little mice. In fact, I can do this. We can come over here and I can grab another start block. And one of the things in music is you end up with multiple voices. Very common to have music that's not just a single voice, but multiple voices. So each start block is of a different voice in your music. And I can play each voice individually, or I can play the voices together. So if I come over here, I'm going to make another voice, say that is going to be, actually this voice, I think I'm going to do just drums.
Walter.
So, yeah.
When I click on start, it doesn't work.
If you click on play, it
Try
does.
clicking on play. You know, the clicking thing might be an issue with the browser. It might not be clicking.
Somebody asked if they can remix your program.
This program that I just have,
Yeah.
if I share it to the planet, they can remix it. Yeah, I can do that. This is kind of, let me just get rid of the mess here, and then I'll share it to the planet. One other thing, in music blocks, there's a trash can over here on the bottom right. So instead of dragging things to the palette to get rid of them, you drag them, put them in the trash. I know that's blasphemy, but it's just what we just going to do.
Why is
Okay.
Maybe
let
a
me-
browser thing. I don't have that trash barrel on mine.
Oh, the trash, it only shows up when you go over to it. As soon as you start to drag a block, the trash should show up.
When I click on start, the trash shows up.
Yeah, that means that you're not clicking. That means you're dragging. So somehow or other with your browser, we'll have to debug this later, but your browser's interpreting clicks as drags
Okay.
for some reason. So can you click on the play button? Does that work?
Because it's an Apple.
Yeah. My last Apple product was Elisa. I'm sorry, I'm just
Jeez.
not an Apple person.
Well, I'm going to load in your thing. You saved it?
Oh, no, I haven't. I'm about to save it right now. I'm going to go to the planet. And this is my project, and I'll give it a name. I'll just call it simple example of action. And let me spell example right. And I click on this button to send it to the planet. And I'm going to tell it that I need to give it a description. Introducing music blocks. And we're going to give it a tag. I submit it. Now, if I go to the planet global, here it is.
Okay, let's see.
And if you click on this, this one here is open up in music blocks, and it'll open it up in music blocks. So I'm just going to go back to my program
How
now.
do you open it? Oh, well, download. No.
No, not that. Here, let me go back. I'll show you again.
Open. I've got it. I've got it.
Okay. Yeah, there's different options for it. Yeah. So you should have this, and if you just click on the play button,
It's out all these things.
Where is set instrument to?
set instrument is under tone.
No,
Okay.
this is just nonsense.
Okay. I'm trying to duplicate your project here.
Okay. Yeah, if you hit if you just hit
Action. Okay, I got that. So, okay, now I'm going to go back to you.
I don't.
So I'm going to do this, which is I'm going to make another action. And this action I'm going to call the drum action. Then I'm going to put my little drums in here. And now I'm going to make another mouse for my drum action. And now I'm going to have two different instruments. So this one,
I have to mute myself, sorry.
and this one is drums. So, and I can play them both together by hitting the play button. So I can play either one separately by hitting start, or I can even actually click on any block and it'll play just that block. So I can play the action separately too. But if I click on play, so you heard the drum going with they played together. So that's sort of the basic idea. And now I'm just going to introduce something kind of.
How do you make the drum do it over and over again?
Okay, I could do that with a. I'm sorry. I'm going to come to flow, and I'm going to do it forever.
Oh, flow and forever. Okay.
Okay, and now this is just going to be like a little drum machine.
So how does it play the instrument and the drum together?
By hitting the play button, it does both starts.
Ah,
So, yeah, so in fact, I can, let me just do something for that as well. Then I'm going to do forever for this guy. And I want to just make an interval. And so forever, I'm going to play the action and then the interval of the action. So this guy's going to do that, and this guy's just going to do his drum over and over and over again. And I'll play them both at the same time by clicking the play button. And I can have a little bit more fun. So for example, actually this is sort of a funny rhythm here, but I'm going to add another note. And let's see, we're going to go to me again. And I'm going to make this be just another eighth note. And I'm going to add another drum. And I'm going to make this one be an eighth note. Let's see, let's make this be a okay. So anyway, so I can start to play around and mix up different voices and things like that. So anyway, what I wanted to do was to introduce another idea, which is this thing called on every note do. And so I'm going to drop on every note do into my start block. And I'm going to rename this guy to be my phrase. And now I need a new action called action. And what this thing is going to do is every time a note gets played, this action is going to get invoked. This action is going to happen every time a note plays. So it's sort of like an event handler. I can sort of say a note playing is an event, and I can say do something on that event. And the thing I'm going to do is some kind of graphic. So I'm going to go forward, and I'm going to turn right. Okay, so the graphics are just like the graphics in Turtle Stitch. So let's see what happens. So I can make different things happen whenever a note plays. I can do any kind of action at all. I just happen to throw some graphics in there. We could make it be a little more fun if we take advantage of the note value. So the note value, remember, it's an eighth, a quarter, a half, an eighth. So we're going to multiply. Oh, I want to multiply the note value times 100. Oh. So instead of going forward by 100, I'm going to go forward by the note value times 100 inside this thing. And let me erase my screen. And actually, I'm just going to get rid of this junk that I accidentally pulled off the palette. Okay. And I'm going to do this this kind of way. I'm just going to do it from the start block. So can anybody tell me why we're seeing the pattern we're seeing? Where's that pattern come from? Any ideas? So, because I'm playing an eighth note, and then I play a quarter note, then I play a half note, and then I play an eighth note, and an eighth note, quarter note, half note, eighth note, quarter note, half note, eighth note. So the length of the chord, the length of the move changes based on the length of the note. And so it's moving farther on a half note than it's moving on a eighth note. So I get this funny little pattern. So you can play around with different things like that. You can change the colors and the pen characteristics and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so that's sort of some of the basics.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Well, those sounds are really obnoxious
Okay.
to my ears. And I'm wondering if you have or Devin has a tune that you could create that's only 3 notes or 4 notes long that is more pleasant to the ears. This one is
All right.
very rough on my ears, and if I were working with kids, they would probably tell me the same thing.
Right. All right. Well, let's see. Let me
So-
find a project that's a little bit more musical.
Well, if you could just change those notes so that they're more desirable. Is that?
Right. Well,
Are you referring to the
my
the
choice of do, sol, mi. Those notes are the ones she doesn't like. My choice of notes.
well, she might be talking about the timbre, the instruments.
No, she's
stuff.
talking about the choice of notes. So I'm going to choose
It could be the timbre, but I don't know what timbre is. I'm musically inept. But there are 2 things that bother me. One, the screen is so cluttered. The code looms at me.
yeah. Well, part of it is because you told me to make it big. But part of it is, yeah, I
Then
mean,
go back to making it small. I mean,
no, but
It says you should try the bassoon.
oh, okay. The sounds may not bother other people.
Yeah, I mean in the classroom, like the kids you know, have been fine with the sounds that are in there. But I think you have a valid point. One important thing to consider is there's a sample widget, which is, you know, probably a little more advanced than where we're at right now. But you can import your own sound in there. So if you have, you know, like an instrument at home, you can, you know, play a sound and then that can become your new sound, or you can sing a note.
Yeah.
So you can change
Right.
it to any sound you like.
Well, let me show 2 things real quick. One thing is that there's some secret little buttons down here on the side. This is how I made it get bigger and smaller. This one just brings all the blocks home. This one hides or shows the blocks. I can hide the blocks, show them again. This one, it collapses everything and expands everything. So there are ways I can collapse everything and just open up the one thing I want to work on right now, stuff like that. So there are a bunch of little tricks that I haven't gone over that are part of just, once you get into it, how to make it a little bit easier but fundamentally, the nature of music is you're gonna have a lot more blocks than you typically have in just a graphics program. There's just a lot to it. Let me just play this one though. This is hot cross buns. So. I think I'm having a little trouble with competing with Zoom here. Let me try to do it again. Was that any better, Cynthia?
No, it's not better, but I think I should not make comments because I'm so, let's have the other people like Leslie, Kate, Cameron, Sonia. If it's fine for them, or Elaine and I both use Macs.
Yeah,
I'm all good with the sound. It's fine because my students love making obnoxious noises, so I can see them going crazy with this. I'm wondering like about this graphic and the significance of it. Like, what is that? Is it representing each code block color as it runs?
right. In this particular case, the graphic is just showing each of these is a measure in music. So the first measure was in hot cross buns, it's a quarter note, half note, then a quarter note, half note, and then 1 a penny, 2 a penny, and then hot cross buns again. So it's showing the quarter note, half note. That's just part 1. And I do part 1 twice, then I do part 2, which is the 1 a penny, 2 a penny part. And that's these eighth notes. And then we go back to part 1 again, which is a quarter note. So the graphic in this case was just a way of showing the color was based on the heading and the note value times 360, how much of the circle you go around for each note. So it was just so, in this particular case, that's what the graphic meant, but you could do anything you want with the graphics. The graphics don't have to be notation. I just happen to like that. This is a one way of doing notation.
Why is that third one higher? That's another thing that's bothering me.
Well, that's because I'm doing this on Zoom. That's the problem. And the reason I'm doing it on Zoom is so I can share it with all of you, but Zoom on my computer sucks up almost the entire CPU, and sometimes Music Blocks gets behind. So it just gets stuck because of that and doesn't quite finish the graphics. There's actually one fix to that, which I can invoke, I think. I'm not sure if I have it under, we don't have it under beginner mode. Let me switch to advanced mode.
You
and then
can use the search if you want to. Just
Oh,
you
you're
can
right.
clock in the search.
Yeah, okay.
That's one way to circumvent that.
Maybe. Here we go. Oh. I don't think it's letting me it's not letting me search for advanced blocks in beginner mode. Oh, wait a minute, there it is. Okay, it did. All right.
Yeah.
All right. This block tells Music Blocks to not try to sync up the sound. So in situations like this, it might fix the problem. Sort of a cheat block, but let's try it again. Let me erase the screen. So maybe I should be using no clock whenever I'm on Zoom with music blocks, but now the third one didn't get out of position. It's just that it does no clock. The timing can get a little bit messy sometimes when you're using multiple voices. They can get a little bit out of sync with each other, but it lets the program sort of mess around when the CPU is running a little slow. So it's a little sneaky detail. So anyway, what I wanted to do next was actually go back to explore. I want to actually go to the lesson plan now. So I feel like I'm done with introducing some of the basics. And the lesson plan is starts off with something that we've played around with in Turtle Stitch, and that is coin flip. So in music blocks, we have a coin flip built in. It's on the number palette. It's just called one of this or that. And I'm going to just start with a fresh project, just get rid of all this stuff. And I'm going to grab the one of this or that button block. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm either going to play me or I'm going to play let's see. I'll choose soul. Okay. And so this is I'm just going to do a coin flip as to which note I'm going to play. So it's either going to play me or soul. Does that make sense to everybody? Sort of like our little coin flip thing we did the other day. So it's just going to flip a coin and choose between one of these two. So if I do this, I do it again, and I do it again. So I'm getting different ones each time. So one of the things we can do is we can do something like this. Let's make a couple of actions. Let's make an action for heads, another action for tails. And let's do this. Media, I'm going to grab a couple of text blocks. Things are just so slow with tails, heads, tails. Oh, this one. And now I'm going to do on the action block, action palette, there's a thing called do. And do just does whatever action you tell it. So now I'm going to tell it to either do the heads action or the tails action. And in the heads action, we will play our soul, and in the tails action, we will play our me. It's not going to be much different than what we did before. And let's do this. Let's put in a repeat. And then I thought I want to introduce this other concept called the box. And the box is like a variable in Snap, but we just call them boxes. And you can sort of imagine a shoebox. And there are a bunch of boxes that are sort of built in. So one of the boxes well, actually, let's do this. Let's use, we're gonna have a box. We're gonna make two new boxes. We're gonna make a box called heads. And we're gonna make a box called tails. Okay, and we're gonna start with 0 in heads, and we're gonna start with 0 in tails. And we'll have that at the very beginning of our program. And then what I want to do is I want to take tails and I want to take heads. And I'm going to do an add. I'm going to use the add one. And if I'm in the tails function, I'm going to add one. And if I'm in the heads action, I'm going to add one. And then let's get that stuff out of the way. I'm going to do one more thing, which is I'm going to come over here and grab the print block. And I need my tails and I need my heads. And I need, this is a little bit sneaky, a couple of adds, because I'm going to make a string. And I'm going to print heads comma tails. So how many heads I've got and how many tails I've got. And I'll put that inside of my repeat. And let's watch the program run. So it did 3 heads and 1 tail. Do it again. 1 head, 3 tails. So a box is basically just a place where you can put, it's a variable. You can put things in it. You can add to the thing in the box. You can replace it. And every time you make a box with a store in box block, it adds a variable to the palette, to the box's palette, and gives me these little shortcuts. So why doesn't everybody try to make a little coin flip and make some actions and do whatever you want with the actions. They can be anything. They don't have to be the things that I did. But why doesn't everybody do that?
And what's the difference between the variable heads and the action heads?
The action is the action and the variable is the variable. They just happen to have the same name. So maybe that's confusion. I can change that. Let me change this to be, I'll call it do heads and I'll call it do tails to make it a little bit more obvious. And then I'm
No,
gonna-
no, don't do that. I mean,
Okay,
well, I don't understand. Now, oh, never mind. Never mind.
okay, well, it's not very helpful to say
Having
you
a
don't understand when you don't
function
want
and a
to.
variable
about.
with the same names.
So variables, variables have a different namespace than actions. So you can use the same name for a variable as an action. But they're different namespaces, so they're going to give you different, so they're not going to conflict with each other. So I've got basically a list of all the actions and a list of all the variables. And if I'm using the variable, then I get the variable. From using the action, I get the action.
I'm wondering where are you telling it to randomly like, where are we randomizing this so we can come up with a heads or a tails randomly?
That's this.
That's the
Do-
do
Yeah.
one of this, one of that block.
So I'm basically saying either do when I do this, do heads or do tails. And that's the do heads or do tails action. So do takes the name of an action to invoke. But again, like in Snap and Turtle Stitch, I could have a command that's the same name as a variable. So I'm not sure what's confusing about, I mean, well, it's just as confusing there, Cynthia.
It's that you don't color code the difference.
I do color code the
And
difference.
we're thinking of other languages or other environments
Right.
where the distinction visually would be helpful, maybe, I don't know.
All right, well, there
That's
is a.
all I'm bringing
The
up.
color is too subtle, but
What?
actions are yellow and variables are orange. So this is orange, and if I went to the action, it's different color. But, you know, it could be more
Okay,
different.
but it isn't in this, it isn't in this example where start is.
You're talking about the string. These are strings. All strings are red.
Okay.
I'm using a string to say this is the name of my variable. My variable's name is a string called heads. My action name is a string called do heads. The string is still a string. It's always red.
Okay, thanks.
Does that make sense? Doesn't sound very much confidence in your voice. So
Well,
I'm
it's something that
the
I can-
name, the name of the action or the name of the string, the name of the box is defined with a string. The string is the word heads or the word tails or the word do heads or do tails. So, but then it creates an action called do tails. It creates a variable called tails.
Okay,
So this thing does a creation, and this thing does a creation. So the action block is how I create something, an action called do tails. And once I've done that, it makes a do tails action block for me. So this is just like the commands. I have this little thing for making a command and makes a command for me. The thing where I tell the name of the command is a string. It's a string in Snap as well, but it's a string in Snap. You always have to type it in. In music blocks, it can be a variable as well. I can make it be anything I want. So I can dynamically generate the names of my actions or the names of my variables, but that's an advanced lesson. We're sort of in the weeds here. I'm not sure it's very helpful.
right. I think people need to try doing things.
Yeah. So why don't we, if people have played with this a little bit and made some kind of coin flip, or should I save this to the planet so people can copy it, remix it? I can do that too.
Yes, save it.
Yeah. Okay. So that should be on the planet. Oh, let me undo my search. Coin flip example should be on the planet. And you can load it into your browser. this button here, open in music blocks. So
Is there a key somewhere that would tell where to find each of these blocks, like a graphic that would tell what the blocks do and where to
yeah,
find
yeah.
them?
So yeah, let me switch to a different tab for a second. So this is the music blocks homepage in GitHub. And there's a file in here called README. And README has and boy, it's just so slow because of anyway, the README says some getting started and a few examples and how to run music blocks and a bunch of stuff like that. But then the interesting things, there are two things that are under using music blocks is a little thing that just sort of explains the basics of a lot of the stuff that I was showing you already, how the toolbars work, how the menus work, a bunch of stuff like that. And then the more interesting one from the point of view of music is something called the guide. And the guide goes into tons of detail about the actual musical components of things. So let me just show you that real quick. The guide is loaded full of stuff. So this is all about actually programming with music. So it has a whole section on notes and pitches. And so if we jump into here, it talks about note value. It talks about showing you all the equivalents in terms of musical notation of different notes. Then it talks about all this stuff. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff. And then it goes into lots of different examples. So this is an example of using actions for phrases and combining phrases in different ways, and then different types of transpositions, and then things like, there are different ways of thinking about the thing we're actually going to get to in a few minutes for the sort of end the lesson with is something that has to do with musical mode. You've all heard of like the key in music, like major, C major, E minor, things like that. Well, there's lots and lots of different modes in music, different keys and different modes. And when you're using music blocks, you have there are two different modalities. One of them is to just play each note on the piano. The white keys and the black keys on the piano, those are called semitones. Those are called half steps. And the other is to play the notes that are in the particular key you defined. So there are two different ways of approaching how you move or navigate. And when we talk about scalar, we're talking about staying on the notes in the key. And when we talk about semitone, we're talking about just stepping through the individual notes and independent of the key. So you can manipulate music blocks either in terms of semitones or in terms of scalar. And in music, you do that a lot. A lot of times you stay in the key and occasionally you leave the key to sort of make a musical point or a musical gesture of some sort. Then you come back to the key, you switch keys partway through your piece and then come back again. There are lots of things like that. All that is supported in music blocks. And I'm going to show an example of that in just a minute. So anyway, there's just, in this guide thing, it goes on and on and on and on. There's lots and lots of stuff here. This has got to do with different types of inversions and dotting notes and ties and slurs and different types of effects, and then goes on and on and on and on and on. This might look familiar. We did a Fibonacci music. This is we did. Here's a binary tree for a recursive tree with music.
With the help.
So anyway, so you can,
Can
Feel
you
free to-
throw that link in the chat?
yeah, I will. Let me just go copy. See if I can get to the chat. Where is the chat button on my screen right now? Oh, more. Chat, okay. So that's the one that's got most of the stuff in it. There's also a web version of this. I think this link will work. That might work. Let's see. Oh, I've got to copy it maybe. Oh, here we go. File not found. Let me find the right file. There's definitely a web version to do.
It worked for me, the GitHub.
Oh.
The
Oh,
first
okay.
work I clicked on and it worked.
Okay, great. Yeah, anyway, so there's lots and lots of stuff in here. There's also a whole bunch of lesson plans similar to what I shared, or what Susan shared with the Zoom link this morning. But there's a whole bunch, and Devin's written a bunch more. Some of them are a little bit sketchy, but basically a lot of different things we've explored with kids. But I want to go and do something a little bit different, just because I think to me, it really drives home a point of a lot of how these pieces fit together. I want to show another example. And that is here. Yeah. Let's open this up. You're probably all familiar, you might not be familiar with the name of something called a Galton box. You've seen like a pegboard with nails on a grid, and you drop a marble at the top and it bounces off the pins on the way down. And if you do that enough, you get a big Gaussian distribution at the bottom. There's a really nice one at the Museum of Science in Boston, really big. So that's called a Galton box. Galton was a British physicist, actually had some really crazy ideas about color that were completely wrong. But anyway, this is a musical Galton box. And actually, I'm going to start with, I'm going to go switch to chromatic. Okay, and what this program does, it's a little bit more complicated than what we were just looking at, but not too much. So I'm setting my key, and then I'm giving my mouse a different shape. Instead of looking like a mouse, now it's going to look like a red ball. And then I'm setting a step size with a variable, and then I'm just going to repeat 25 times. I'm going to drop the ball.
Okay.
Well, what does drop the ball do? Well, drop the ball goes to the top of the screen. So I, just like in Turtle Stitch, I can pen up. I set the XY position to the top of the screen, or almost to the top of the screen. And then I put my pen down and I play a note. So I'm always going to start with Sol, starting sort of in towards the middle of my key. And then I go through a loop. Now, each mode, like they're in C major, there are 7 notes, and then the 8th note is back to the next C, an octave higher. And in the chromatic, there are 11 notes, and then the 12th note is back to the next key. So mode length is just how many notes are in the mode. So I'm going to repeat mode length times, and I'm going to store in the variable left, right, 1 or -1. So I'm using the 1 of a coin flip. Coin flip, if it's, I'm either going to get a 1 or a -1 with my coin flip. And then I'm going to do, this is a little bit of tricky math, but basically I'm saying I'm going to make my new X position be the step size times left or right. So if it was a -1, it's going to go to the left. If it was a +1, it's going to go to the right. And then I'm just dropping my Y position down by step size. And then I'm playing a note, and the note I'm going to play is based on, I'm either going to go up or down on the scale based on whether it was a 1 or a -1. Scalar steps just says, take this many steps in the scale up or down, depending on positive or negative. So that's the program, and let me run it. I hear nothing. Do you hear anything?
No.
Something went. How can that be? Somehow it's decided to stop sharing my sound. Let me just reload my, I'm just gonna refresh this window. Maybe it'll work. My friend Zoom. This is the one I played when we first started to see that something that works, because it worked for us before. For some reason, it's I don't know what's going on. Let me stop sharing and share again.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like my computer's going in slow motion.
You need to get a Mac.
I
No,
think
that's not the solution. Does anyone have any questions about like the music part of
I-
this? There's a
I
little bit
have
of an echo. Yeah,
I
go ahead.
have a question not about them, but when I went to Global, I didn't know what project Walter had just saved.
Yeah, usually it's gonna be like at the top. And it sounds like you did go to global. There's, one thing that sometimes people overlook is there's like the local and then there's the global.
No, I'm sorry to ask you that question. You didn't answer it, but I couldn't remember the name that he gave to the project. And there were a dozen projects there, and I couldn't tell.
right. So I'm not
It
sure
looks-
how I could. If you didn't remember the name, you're certainly welcome to ask me. But the way that they display is the most recent, it would be the very upper left. So that's probably the one, unless somebody else slipped a project in between when I saved and when you looked, which certainly could happen. I'm not sure how else to fix that.
Okay.
It looks like coin flip
I can-
example.
Yeah. My computer does not want this.
Well, why don't you have somebody else run the
Yeah,
program?
let somebody else do it. Let me paste the link to the project into, actually, I can't even get to the link because I just can't get anything to run. Devin, maybe you can do this. There's a project on the planet called Simple Galton, or Galton Box Simple, or Simple Galton Box. Should be a very recent one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let me just first see if I can share the screen.
And when you share, you got to click the share sound button.
Yeah.
The share sound button too.
Oh, I pressed the wrong button here. Oh gosh. I don't see, oh, I see it now.
All right, it seems to be working now. Maybe I can get it to work. So
Yeah, I think you should do it because I'm not
all right,
quite
let me try.
confident it's gonna work.
Try to share. Share sound. All right. You see my screen, everyone? No. Share.
No.
Now you see it. Oh,
Now we do, yeah.
okay. All right. So let me just run this, try to run it. And remember that no clock thing? I'm gonna have to do that.
Well, I'm going to try running it.
You can search.
There's a question, Walter. How do you
Yep.
clear the screen after it has run once?
There's a button on the upper right that's a little eraser button. A little gray eraser button.
You see that, Elaine?
That's the clear button.
Yeah.
Let's try this again. So this is selecting notes from a C major scale, right? And
It's kind of mesmerizing to watch.
yeah. Right. I'm gonna stop
Imagine
it.
kids like this a lot.
And now what I'm gonna do, I want to just do one thing, and you gotta really use your ears for this now. I'm gonna switch to a different mode instead of using C major, I'm gonna switch to a mode that's one of the modes in Japan. And I want to use your ears and see whether you hear if it sounds different to you. It's the same program. All I'm doing is choosing a different selection of notes to choose from. In this particular mode, there are only 5 notes instead of 7 notes. So you're getting, and it's a particular selection of notes that are, to my ear at least, sound very un-Western. They sound, the sound of even the randomly selected notes out of the mode is very different than the sounds you get from a Western mode. Does that, anybody else hear that, or does it all sound just like noise?
No, I heard it.
So it's just sort of an interesting way to sort of explore how the choice of the notes really makes a difference in terms of the characteristic of the music, independent of the composition. It can be a random composition, but having chosen a mode, you get a particular flavor, feeling, independent of everything else. So there's one other thing I wanted to quickly talk about, and that is this thing called widgets. And what the widgets are a bunch of little tools that allow you to explore different aspects of music. So for example, one of my favorites is this thing called a Rhythm Maker. And the Rhythm Maker just lets you make drum machines. So if I can click on the Rhythm Maker, and here's a little drum machine maker. And it starts off with just one measure, because I told it here on one measure. And I can click on it and divide it. And I can divide my notes up into different parts. And I can play that and hear it. And I can change it. Let's undo, and let's make it be a slightly different rhythm. So I can play around with different rhythms. If I want, I can also change. I don't have to do everything in terms of power of 2. I can switch and make this into thirds and ninths or 18ths. And then the fun thing that I can do with this is I can play around with the Rhythm Maker and play around on the widget, and then I can use it to actually export some code. So I'm going to save out a drum machine. So it made a new action block for me. And that action block has the code that would generate the same rhythm. So you can use the widgets as sort of a shortcut to generating some code. And there are lots of different widgets to let you explore different ideas. So there's a widget that's about rhythm. There's a widget about phrase. There's a widget about mode. There's a widget about temperament. There's a widget about timbre. There's a widget about just about anything you can think of. There's widgets for. There's widgets that allow you to find different types of intervals and arpeggio and all different types of things like that. So the fun thing about the widgets is that whatever you do in the widget will export code. And so it's a way of a sort of a shortcut for generating some of your musical ideas. And then the other thing is that the widgets themselves are programmable. So this widget, when I launched the widget, I launched it by saying I want one rhythm for a snare drum, and it's just going to be a whole note that I start with. But I could take this and I can say, well, let's actually do 2 of these. I'm going to stick 2 of these inside of here. And one will be a snare drum and one will be, say, a chime. And now when I launch the widget, I have 2. And remembered what I did last time, and I've got this one. I can just erase and start all over again. So this one is my snare drum, and this one is my chime. And now when I play them, So it's not cooperating very well with Zoom again, but the idea is you can do multiple rhythms, you can do polyrhythms, you can have one rhythm going with, I'll do this again, let me erase. I'll do this one, there's quarter notes, and I'll do this one as thirds, so now they get in and out of phase with each other. But it's, yeah, again, I'm just having trouble getting it to play properly with Zoom. But the idea is, so, whatever you do with a widget lets you have some blocks that it creates for you. So this was the snare action from before. If I open this up, you can see that it defines all these notes with these drums. And I can play that, and it'll actually give me the code for what I designed with the widget. And again, there's widgets for doing lots of other stuff as well. So the widgets are described in that guide. And again, you can play around with tempo, you can play around with mode. There are different ways of defining different types of pitches, all sorts of stuff. And then, yeah, in advanced mode, there's even a bunch more widgets. There's an oscilloscope, there's a sampler that Devin mentioned earlier, lots of different things like that. Yeah, so you can have an oscilloscope that shows you the waveform as the music plays, things like that. I think that's probably enough. You're probably all saturated, and we didn't really have a lot of tinkering time today. And I apologize for all of you Mac users, which is probably all of you but me, that Music Blocks need to do more debugging on Mac. But hopefully you got at least a little bit of flavor, and feel free to contact me or Devin with any questions going forward.
Well, thank you. I'm really glad that we recorded this, and it'll be up on the Tea and Turtle Stitch 2 video channel, because I want to try out a lot of these things, but I'm not as familiar with how these blocks fit together, because I haven't done turtle art. So
Right.
I'll have a chance to go back and continue. You lost me after about 20 minutes, but I watched everything.
All right. Look at the guide on Music Blocks for Snap users. Because I think the Music Blocks for Snap users will explain a lot of the different.
Will help a lot, yeah. I just had trouble orienting myself, knowing where all the palettes were and what were
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, and in advanced mode, there's even more. So it gets really pretty intense. But
Yeah.
yeah, because basically it's all the palettes you would have normally for the graphics and all, and then all these other palettes for music. So
Yeah.
there's so like at least 50% more palettes than you would have normally because of all the musical stuff.
Well, I'm excited about it, Walter, for me, because in my school, we have a music club, but they only have like 5 instruments, because
But they have
it's
they
very
have a
low
MIDI.
income school. And this is really an option for doing some interesting things.
It's
I-
feast or famine, Susan, because we have every single student at our school, in our middle school, learns to play the violin. So this has me thinking, what could we do with that? How could we pull the violin and keep them going on that?
There you go.
There's if you have a MIDI keyboard, and I think they have one at the clubhouse at the Mel King space, right, Susan? There's a MIDI keyboard, as I recall. And there's a cable you can get to connect the keyboard to the computer. I think you have one of them.
No, the computer clubhouse has a keyboard that you're talking about, but I don't have one at the Madison Park Technical Vocational High School.
Oh,
So,
okay, but I think
I'm
you have one
sure
at the
that they
clubhouse.
have something that connects. I'm sure.
Right, so there's a cable, there's a MIDI cable you can get that'll connect your MIDI keyboard to a USB port. And if you have that cable, then if you go to the keyboard widget, which is one of the widgets that looks like a piano keyboard, you can
Yeah.
actually connect your MIDI keyboard, and you can program music blocks by just playing the piano.
I got that. I wrote down the name. I need a MIDI cable.
Yeah, I can get you the details because I got one for my
Great.
grandson. So,
Any
Yeah, and
other
if you
questions,
don't
comments?
if you don't have the cable, you can just type it in with the keys on the keyboard too, which
Yeah.
is kind of nice. Or
Yes, yeah.
with a touch screen, you can just touch the keys.
Yeah,
Okay,
there are hotkeys for generating notes and music blocks as well, just
cool,
shortcut keys.
cool. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question again about what I found out about the global thing, and is that I have to click on the update. I forget what it's called, but there's an
All projects, maybe you have to click on the all projects.
No, but the problem was I loaded the ones you saved, but they didn't have the graphics with it. Or they were just
Oh,
They-
they were just blank. They didn't
they
have any
weren't
graphics on the right.
they
On the
they only did one thing. They were examples of I don't, Walter, I am tongue-tied and I am sorry, but what you saved wasn't what I retrieved.
Okay,
Okay.
Yep.
It was a very cleaned up act with very, I would have liked the whole thing to play with. I'm sorry,
okay.
but I thank you. And I want to make sure that people have Devin's email in case they want to, they certainly have yours, but
Yep.
maybe Devin could put his email in the chat. So if people wanted,
Yes, it's in the chat.
yeah, he put it there. Good.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, well, thanks everyone for
And,
being patient with me.
Thank
And
you.